You can hear that, did you? Sure.
Hey, everybody, this is Dana. We will get started here in just a couple minutes. I see a few more connecting. If you wouldn't mind putting your name and organization in the chat for me, that just helps me kind of track who was on. If there's more than one of you in a room and those kinds of things, that will be helpful. And then just reminder to mute your lines if you're not speaking so that we don't get too much background noise. That would be helpful. Thanks. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Today is World Sepsis Day, September 13th. This is just going to be kind of a kickoff to our learning collaborative that will focus on sepsis and that will start next month. But we decided to do this a little earlier so that we could recognize World Sepsis Day. My name is Dana Steiner. I work with the Nebraska Hospital Association on the HQuick project. Other NHA staff that are on today are Amber Kavan and Margaret Weppel. So just a couple housekeeping things for those of you that didn't hear. Please put your name and organization in the chat. Just helps me better know who joined us today. Remember to mute your line if you are not speaking or don't want to speak so that we don't get the background noise. We are going to record the event, so that will be available if you have people that would like to access it after today, or if you weren't able to stay on with us. So I'm super excited. We have a couple guest speakers joining us today. They're going to talk a little bit about their personal experience with sepsis. So I think that will be fairly eye-opening for those of us that maybe have not had a personal experience with that. So we'll go ahead and get started and go from there. So today is World Sepsis Day. It is the 10th anniversary of World Sepsis Day. So they've been celebrating that for 10 years. Sepsis rates have been increasing since 1993. And despite being a medical emergency, many feel that sepsis does not get the attention it deserves. Though awareness has grown over the past decade, there's still more work we can do, which gives us kind of the why behind what we do and focusing on sepsis and improving the care we give. So our learning objectives for today are to discuss why sepsis work is important, review some sepsis facts, understand the effects that sepsis has on the patients and family members, and then understanding the next steps in our cohort. Last year, we did put together a sepsis toolkit. I put the link here on this slide. It's on the NHA website. We also have hard copy versions, so if that's something you or someone in your organization would be interested in, holler, and we can get one mailed out to you. So enough of my talking. I'm going to hand it off to our first speaker, and I should have probably asked how to pronounce his name before I got to this point. So I'm
give it a shot.
You want me to give it a shot?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's do that.
Jeremiah Dirksen.
Wow, nice. Yep, you got it. Nailed it.
Did I get it? All right.
Yep, you did.
So
You did
Jeremiah's
good.
going to join us. I'll let him kind of introduce himself, and he's just going to really tell us a little bit about his journey through sepsis and kind of where he's at now. So I will hand it off. Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me. My name is Jeremiah Dirksen, as you said. I guess I went through sepsis and some fun trials with that. You know, I got 93% of my battery, so I can go for a while, but I don't know how long you want me to. But basically, I guess to go kind of my story, a lot of it, as we kind of talked in the beginning, I had to kind of talk to my wife about, because one great thing about marrying a nurse is you just don't worry about things that happen on the medical side, right? I just kind of hand it off to her and say, hey, you deal with it, tell me what I need to do, and that's what I'll do. And so, you know, my time through this journey was definitely different than what she and her friends, family that had to deal with, right? So, you know, that's kind of the biggest thing for me off this whole thing, is I was really, really, really lucky to have my wife there, because she was pretty big and making things happen. You got her and then another nurse at the intensive care unit in Lincoln, and then Amber on the call. And then I know I saw some other people on the call from Saunders that definitely helped try to push things through. So, you know, that's kind of the biggest thing that I took after this whole thing, was just having that advocate there, because there's a lot of unknowns what I went through. So to kind of start, you know, basically what happened, I had a really bad sore throat. I'm not really a one to get sick very often. I think I'd used like 3 sick days in the last 7 years before that. So just don't get sick. And was got a really bad sore throat. And on a Thursday, I kind of had a fever, a little bit of body aches. And I know like influenza was going around at the time. My wife, I'm sure she was concerned about me, but she was pretty concerned that the kids might get it. So she's like, hey, we need to go get tested. Make sure if you have that, because I think at the time, and this might be inaccurate, but there was something that the kids could take to help with that if somebody else in the family had it. So went into the clinic with, you know, sore throat, fever, body ache, and got tested for influenza. It came back negative, but I think there was a lot of negative tests at the time. So we just proceeded to treat me with influenza. Went home, I think it was on a Friday, continued kind of those symptoms into the weekend. And it was kind of coming right up to New Year's Eve on that Sunday night of that weekend. So I was kind of determined to be better so we could go out and have some fun. Sunday morning, I wake up and my sore throat's gone. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm better. what had happened on Saturday night, the night before, was kind of wild because my legs got really, really tight. Like I struggled moving them. I was on the couch at the time, so I didn't bother anybody in the house. But, I limped into the bathroom because I thought, oh, I'll just take a warm bath. Maybe I'm just body aches. And I literally could not figure out how to get in our tub. My legs hurt so bad, but I thought, well, my throat's feeling better. So maybe it's just part of the things on the mend. So tried to go back to bed again. Sunday, woke up, throat feeling a lot better. Told my wife, hey man, I'm ready to go out tonight. I think I'm gonna be good when you get back from church. She's like, yeah, okay, whatever, so she went to church, comes home, and I'm done, right? My legs are enormous pain, high fever, throat's still gone, but I have all these symptoms. So she's like, hey, we're going in. I know she'd been trying to get me in earlier. I was like, nah, I'll be fine, honey. So we went in she called the ER, told them we were coming in, came in, and we just went to a treatment room, and a nurse gave me a thing of fluids. And I know she just mentioned I didn't pee through the whole one unit of fluids. So they gave me another one. I finally peed, and then we thought, well, I was feeling a little bit better. So we went home. I know what was crazy is we pulled the driveway. I have like 2 stairs to get up into the garage. And so basically I'm kind of crawling into the house, go sit on the couch. And I still can remember for this day, I'm sitting on the couch, and I got to the couch, turned around to my wife, said, we got to go back. I said, this is not right. It's awful. And so she's like, okay. So she made some arrangements with kids and tried to get them where they needed to go. And so we next proceeded to get me into the car. And that was kind of the same thing. I remember just crawling on my hands and knees to get to the door and getting down the stairs, trying to get in the car. But got in it, got to the ER. And then that's when they someone was checked in, doctor came in, kind of was looking me over, got some pain meds. I think they determined rhabdo. Is that it? I don't know if that's the right term, but with my legs and my arms kind of started getting pretty tight. Got me on some pain meds. I started kind of feeling better, but as soon as they wore off, same pain. Throughout that time, I think they were trying to figure out exactly what it would be, determined, hey, it'd be better to go to Lincoln. So then like, okay, so I got back in the car and we drove to Lincoln. Crazy thing, we got sent to the wrong hospital. So I got out of my car, barely got to the front desk, like, oh yeah, we don't have you here. So finally figured out, oh, it's at the other hospital. So got back in the car, which at this point was just, it was impossible to get in the car. I could not believe it. My legs just absolutely would not work. So we finally got to the hospital in Lincoln, and it was weird. My wife even said right away, they just put me in a general admission room and said, okay, gave me some pain meds, say, we'll see how it looks in the morning. Instantly in the morning, and this part now is fuzzy. Most of this is filled in by my wife, I guess, but right away, the doctor comes in the morning and he looks at me, he's like, oh my gosh, like you need to be in intensive care. Like this is not the place you need to be. So right away in the morning, they shipped me up to intensive care. And honestly, that's where, things got worse. But then one of the nurses actually from Wahoo happened to be my intensive care nurse. And I know for a fact she had to be a huge reason why that I'm alive, I think, because she was for all you nurses out there, just keep being bulldogs, because that's what she was, and she helped push things through, and that was what was kind of great. So from there, it was kind of awkward because nobody really could figure out exactly what was going on. I know I got tons of tests, blood work. This was before masks in the hospital, and they were wearing masks in there at first because they're like, they had no idea what was going on. And so a bunch of different tests. Finally, I think they swabbed my throat, and then they determined that I had strep throat, and that was probably the culprit why I went sepsis. So once I kind of figured that out, a lot more fluids, a lot of pumping those things in, but it's so crazy because my arms and legs, they kept getting tighter and tighter. I remember laying in the bed and I could barely reach over to grab water. Like my this hand, I couldn't even move it. Legs barely move it. Starting to get really swollen, just crazy. I know they kept bringing different doctors in. They kept looking at my feet, and I was kind of worried about it a little bit, but kind of all in all, I felt good because I was in a hospital. Like, hey, what better place to be? It got me. I do remember looking out and seeing this big black box sitting outside my room, and I asked one of the nurses, like, what's that? And they're like, you don't want to know what that is. And apparently it's some machine that they flay your leg open with. I don't know if that's right. You guys would know maybe, but to try to get infection out of it. And they're like, we just put this here to kind of ward off evil spirits because we don't want that to happen. I'm like, yeah, no kidding, you know. And so a doctor kept coming in and he would check it every day. It's like he wanted to kind of, he's like, I don't think we need to yet. I'm like, okay. And so, and this whole time I'm not getting any better. I still have high fevers, still have body aches, just something isn't right. And that's where I say, like, my wife and this nurse and, you know, they kept hammered on and we got to do something. We got to do something. And there's one doctor in there especially, and I wish today I don't remember her name, but she was on this case calling, I don't know, it was crazy stuff. I think all these 4 seemed like that they were doing in the background. So then kind of a turning point in all of it. Well, I guess to precede that, I ended up getting a blood clot in my right leg and my calf. So I got put on blood thinners at that point because of that. And then I still, like, again, I wasn't getting better. So finally I had a bowel movement and I didn't want to because I knew I couldn't get to the bathroom. And the nurse was like, oh, here, you're just going to go in here. We'll lift you up. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And they're persistent, you know, nurses like, you're going to do it. It's fine. We're nurses, you know, okay. Finally, I couldn't take any longer, so I did, right? And that's when they saw there was all kind of blood in my stool. So that set off a whole nother batch of alarms of, oh my gosh, we got to test a lot of other things. So one of the tests was like, because I had been doing like CAT scans, all kind of things. And so one of the tests they did was they stuck some down my throat. Oh, he's got 2 bleeding ulcers at this point. And so that was kind of scary because I was on blood thinners and bleeding ulcers. So it was kind of weird because I was kind of feeling better, but not all the way better. And then the doctor that came in to look at that, he was like, this is really, really, really bad. And it was kind of a weird point because I know that night my wife, they must have told her, hey, bring the kids in. So the kids actually came, which I thought was kind of weird. This whole time my wife's done, I thought, a phenomenal job of not shielding me completely, but she did such a good job of just like, she's so calm in the whole thing and just like spur and steady. So I didn't really know like the direness of everything all the time. So I was able just kind of be easy in there. And so, you know, that was one point where I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of weird. I haven't seen the kids in a few days. And Tony's like, oh yeah, they wanted to see you and hug them and kiss them, you know. And so that timing, I think it started like the no water, which I thought of all the things I went through. And this whole time, the worst thing that I remember is I couldn't have water for like 36 hours or something crazy like that because of the ulcers. So that, which seems minor, was my least favorite part. So that night, I think I got 6 units of blood along with fluids. And then maybe they did the surgery the next day or it's vice versa. I don't remember, but I do remember that night being pretty rough. Nurse in there sat there the whole time to get me through it. So once I got the blood and once they went in and were able to fix the ulcers, I started feeling better. So I spent about, I think, 7 days in the ICU going through that, and then got sent over to maybe general. And I was there for another week because I kept having small fevers. Had to learn how to walk. You guys saw some pictures in there. My leg got crazy blisters and it was wild. My legs were so swollen and my whole body was, I think, from all the fluids, but the pain just to like swing my legs off the bed, I dreaded it so much to do PT because that hurt so bad just to swing it over and get the feet down. I don't know what that was, blood running to it, I'm not sure, but it was just excruciating. At that point we started walking, doing PT. And then I think you guys have pictures and eventually you'll see of that. But so the PT is pretty big. It was kind of another wild story because we had quite a few little things intersect in there that really worked in my favor, right? You know, and one of them was we were kind of having some issues as I was getting close to getting released where our insurance wouldn't let me stay on or go to the particular rehab that my wife kind of wanted. And she happened to be walking in the hallway and the PT guy at Wahoo, Nick Bruning, happened to be there as well. And we knew Nick as in college. And so my wife knew him from SMC and he's like, what are you doing here? And so they had a conversation about it and we started talking PT and where to go. And Nick's like, you bring him to Wahoo, I'll take care of him. And so we ended up transferring after they let me out of the hospital, which that to me was the most annoying because they wouldn't let me leave until my fevers kind of were down because I think with infection and everything. And I tell you, to this day, getting my temperature checked I hate it. Like that was most annoying 30 seconds. I'm like, oh, please don't be a fever again. Oh, it's 100. It's like it never would go down. So finally, after a week, they're like, okay, you can go. So into Wahoo, which is nice because I was at home, see the kids, really nice. And then, like I said, I thought, PT was, Nick did such an amazing job because he's like, you know what, we're going to do it a little different. I know you're kind of a competitive guy. Even from the first time where he was assessing me, we're walking around the hall and some elderly person on a walker was passing me. He's just like, hey, you gonna let that happen the whole time? We're getting better. So like instantly he kind of spurned me a little bit, and he said, hey, within 3 weeks you're gonna run a mile. I'm like, at the point I couldn't walk, like I got canes to walk around, and he's like, you want to walk those canes? I'm like, no. He said, then why are you walking with them? And so kind of different banner maybe used with me. But at the end of the day, we started lifting weights and doing some heavy PT, and he wasn't wrong. In about 3 weeks, I actually jogged a mile. Limped for a long time. Still have some pretty good soreness and tightness in my left ankle, but it usually goes away pretty quick in the morning. Walk like a tin man for a couple steps, and I start feeling better. So that's kind of a quick story. I'll be open for questions if you guys have them, or if I need to expand on anything. But that's kind of what happened.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have questions? Not to put you on the spot, but how old were you when all this happened?
Oh, I think it was 3 years ago, January. So coming up on 4th year. So, and I'm 41 right now. So we can do the math.
So quite young.
Yeah. I didn't, it was wild because I just, like I said, I'd never had issues with being sick or, and it was a crazy deal. I felt different, I think, about the scenario. I know it was pretty serious in the back end. The amount of doctors that came in and just blew my mind from every different kind that I could imagine came in to talk to me, ask me questions. That I just think there was such a scramble to try to figure out what was going on.
This is Margaret from Margaret from the NHA. I just think that's a perfect example of how sepsis can sneak up on you. Being a young, healthy person with strep throat, who hasn't had strep throat? I know that in my nursing career, it was always a surprise when somebody presented this way. This is such an important story. Sorry, Amber, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, Jeremiah, besides the stiffness in the mornings, do you notice any other side effects related to your survival story?
I don't think so. I know my wife, especially for the interim, like the short time after that, she was pretty concerned because apparently once you've had sepsis, it's more likely to happen again. It was her feeling. So, she's a little bit more cautious about if I was sick to maybe go in. A couple days, take some medicine. Oh, can you guys hear me all right? My microphone changed. You guys still hear me?
Yep.
You blinked out for a minute, but you're back.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Can you not hear us now? We can hear you.
Can you guys hear me all right? Oh, I lost
Now we can
everybody.
hear you. Oh, can you? Oh. We can hear you. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, kind of. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there, I got you back. Sorry, my headphones kind of went weird on me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So, as I was saying, I think other effects, aside from leg soreness, I haven't noticed anything. I haven't got, again, I don't know. I looked this year on my vacation the other day. I haven't used a sick day. So, I don't know. Aside from that, that's the only one I have is my foot. It's kind of like my back, my left Achilles bothers me, but just a little sore and just go on with life.
So any other questions from anybody else?
Thanks for sharing, Jeremiah.
Hi, Denise.
There's a team of us here.
Well, good. Good. No, I know, like I said before, I think one thing with this whole thing is it's so confusing. And so, I know Joni's talked about it a lot, like a lot of the nurses around her that she knew, and, Amber's on here, Denise, I know, Jessica I saw in there, like a lot of these nurses were, it's just crazy how much, I think that they did in the background of just trying to push harder and say, hey, there's something else wrong. Something's not right. I mean, I know that was just such a big piece of this. And Amanda Miloshek, who become friends with now, she was a ER nurse, and man, she just was like, no, this is not right. Something is wrong, and pushed so heavy on it that I just think for sure that helped save me, because they did so many more tests to learn what was going on. And I know, like, swabbing me for my throat took a while. So, oh yeah, there's my legs.
Those are some of the pictures Jeremiah shared of what his legs ended up looking like during that time. Those blisters are crazy.
Yeah, all those lines, the doctor kept coming in. I swear he wanted to cut my feet open, but he just wouldn't. So I was glad about that. So he's like, no, not today. I'm like, okay, good. So.
These are the other, a few more.
I remember that day. I think that was the first day I walked, right there to the right. So that PT nurse was pretty awesome too. So I think I was slightly rude that day. She didn't take any of it, so that was good. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. If nobody has questions, we can let you get back. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today and
no problem.
Walk back through that time.
Yep. If you ever have questions, hit me up. I'll be happy to answer them or whatever. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll just move into our next speaker, and then I'll wrap up for us. So Jeannie Timmy, which a lot of you probably know her, she's been kind of part of our quality world for many years, from Boone County, is going to share a story, a little bit different outcome than Jeremiah's, about a sepsis loss that she experienced. And so I'll hand it off to Jeannie. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Sounds
okay,
good.
Perfect. Well, as you know, I'm Jeannie Timmy from the Boone County Health Center. I have been here at Boone County for 40 years. I can't believe it's been that long. I'm currently doing quality and risk management, and I do employee health and compliance, and I work closely with our safety director. So I want to welcome you all this afternoon. So my story starts with this. So on Monday, January 27th, 2020, my husband and I were packed and getting ready to leave on a trip to Jamaica with some friends. The day before, we had celebrated our granddaughter's birthday with our son, Matt, and our daughter-in-law, Shannon. Everyone was happy and healthy. The next night, Tuesday, about 2 a.m, I received a phone call from my daughter telling me that my daughter-in-law, Shannon, was sick and being taken to the hospital. So let me tell you about Shannon, a healthy young woman until a rare virus attacked her liver when she was 22 years of age. Doctors initially thought it was her gallbladder due to the symptoms she was having. So it was removed, and initially she did very well, but then started having symptoms again. So further testing revealed her liver was failing due to this virus, and she would need a new liver. So she was placed on the transplant waiting list. Within a couple of days, taking a sudden turn for the worse and almost losing her, her name was moved up to the top of the transplant list, praying a donor would surface. Within a day, because of a motor vehicle accident that took the life of a person whose liver Shannon would receive, gave her new life and a future. So Shannon never took for granted the gift of life she was given by this donor. And a year later, she and her family did have a chance to meet the family of the donor. So Shannon and our son, Matt, married and welcome their first child, Olivia Grace, only to lose her 4 hours after birth. As you see, Olivia was born with a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. For those that don't remember what that is, a fetus can develop a hole in the diaphragm during development in the womb. It causes the abdominal organs to herniate into the chest cavity, which affects the development of the lungs and heart. It occurs in less than 5 births out of 10,000. Unfortunately, the odds were not on Olivia's side, and Matt and Shannon had to bury their little girl, our first grandchild. Matt and Shannon ended up having a little girl, Eliana Rose, now 5, and a son, Creighton James, who's 3. And I'm trying to bring up those slides for you to see them, but my slides are not moving for some reason. Both of them are healthy and a blessing. 1 week after Creighton was born, Shannon ended up in the hospital with blood clots attached to her uterus and severe iron deficiency. They had previously removed her spleen during her last pregnancy, thinking this was the cause of some of her health issues. When most people become ill with the flu or dehydration, they are able to get rest and use over-the-counter methods. In Shannon's case, she would end up in the hospital. I can't tell you how many times over the years we would get a call from Matt telling us Shannon was back in the hospital, sometimes for a night, sometimes for a few days. But each time she would get better and be able to return home. I can't get my slides to go. The night we received the call saying Shannon was back in the hospital. Could have been like any other previous notification. We would have offered our services to babysit or to help in any way, but this time it seemed different to us. We talked about staying home and waiting to see what report we would get in the morning, but something told us to head to Kearney just in case. So we took off for our long 2-hour drive. We met Matt at the hospital along with Shannon's family. Matt was upset we came because of our upcoming trip. He assured us that she would be fine after a couple of days in the hospital, just like every other time. Something didn't feel right this time, so my husband and myself decided we weren't going anywhere except to be with him and Shannon. We were told that Shannon had been en route with her kids to visit her parents since Matt was out of town. During the 1-hour drive, Shannon was talking to her family and then reported she just started not feeling well. She arrived safely to their house. She had some water, she ate a little bit, and she lay down for a nap. Waking up, she reported she felt a little better, but then decided to go back to bed, only to get right back up and tell her family something was not right. At that point, her family drove her to their local hospital. Within minutes of arriving, Shannon's heart stopped twice. Upon transfer to Kearney's hospital, we were given the diagnosis of sepsis. My daughter and myself are both nurses, so hearing that diagnosis caused us a lot of fear, especially knowing of Shannon's other health issues. I remember sitting in the lobby of the hospital with Matt. He was upbeat and optimistic Shannon was going to come out of this like she had every other time. No one had told him of the seriousness of this diagnosis. I decided I needed to have a private conversation with him and be as honest as I could about how fast this diagnosis can come on and how life-threatening it can be. I'll never forget how he looked at me with shock and fear. I suggested to him that time may not be on his side and maybe he wanted to spend as much time with Shannon as he could. Seeing this young woman lying in bed, hooked up to every tube possible, so full of fluid, having a machine breathe for her was even difficult for me to stomach, much less anyone else. Shannon spent a couple days in Kearney before the decision was made to airlift her to UNMC. This whole time, Shannon was unrecognizable, filling up with so much fluid and every organ in her body shutting down. As you are all aware, difficult decisions had to be made. Matt was so appreciative of the chapel at the Med Center, where he spent 3 long days praying for direction, for courage, for guidance. He made sure Shannon's family's input was gotten. He made sure my husband and I were supportive and agreed with his decision to discontinue the ventilator. Shannon only survived a short time after being removed from the ventilator. Then she got to be reunited with Olivia, her firstborn daughter. So in honoring Shannon and knowing how important organ donation was to her, Matt really tried hard to push for any possible organ or skin donation. But unfortunately, Shannon's body did not meet the criteria, which Matt tried to understand, but of course was disappointed. He knew how much that would have meant to her, knowing she could have helped someone else out. So do I believe Shannon was given the best possible care at all the hospitals she was at? I absolutely want to believe that. Do I believe early intervention and treatment was done? Again, I really want to believe that too. This just reminds us of the seriousness of this diagnosis and the urgency to recognize it and treat it. So thank you all for your time and your support, and especially NHA, of the sepsis education and awareness that you're helping each hospital. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Wow, that's heartbreaking. Thank you so much for reliving that for us and helping us understand the importance. Does anybody have questions, or did they ever find out what the infection source was for her?
They did not. They did not. If they did, Matt was never told. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jeannie, what a heartfelt story. I'm so sorry. What advice would you give us nurses and as quality leaders going forward? Is there any one thing that you've done at your hospital that you think made more of a difference in the preparation of your hospital to take on and recognize sepsis patients?
You know, I think we have tried to do a lot of education to our clinical staff, our providers, our nurses. You know, I think the awareness of the fluids, the need for the fluids, to get those fluids on board, to start those fluids. Nothing's going to be hurt by by starting fluids. And so even if you don't have a definitive diagnosis up front, get some fluids going on board. And I think that's probably one of the main things we have tried to really get across. And then to always keep that potential diagnosis in the forefront, that might be what we're dealing with. So.
And I think that's so interesting and true, because I've been a nurse for 15 years, and the more, I mean, now you hear sepsis and we discuss it. And I remember when I first started nursing, I don't really remember even, I mean, here and there, but there definitely wasn't the focus on it. So I do think it's making a difference, and people are talking about it more and focusing on it. So I think hopefully we're at least creating some of that awareness and the urgency you spoke of, that get some processes in place to ensure that's happening.
Right. And I totally agree with you, Dana. You know, I've been a nurse for a long time too. And I feel like it's just been in the last 5-6 years or so that really, and maybe not even that long, that really the education and the awareness, and thank goodness that is out there, because of the seriousness of this and the loss of lives from it. And so, you know, there's always in the back of your mind, you know, could have lives, you know, lost been prevented if there'd been quicker intervention taken. So.
Absolutely. How about anybody else? Anybody else have questions or comments or? Okay. Well, I just have a few kind of closing slides to go through. Thank you, Jeannie, so very much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I know that's probably not an easy story to share, so.
Thank you.
So just kind of talking back through sepsis. Sepsis arises when the body's response to an infection or injures its own tissues and organs. 47 to 50 million cases per year are seen, and at least 11 million deaths per year. And those numbers are just staggering to me when you really think about, is that the diagnosis you think of when you have someone come in with an infection, or is it really is more prevalent than sometimes I think I let myself even realize. So 1 in 5 deaths worldwide is associated with sepsis. So there's just a lot more out there, I think, than I let myself sometimes realize. And I think just having processes in place to take us down those algorithms to make sure that we're at least giving the sepsis the thought that it will be useful. So as far as on the quality side of things, so CMS kind of has a sepsis bundle. And a lot of times I think of critical access hospitals, sometimes we don't have a definitive diagnosis when we see a patient maybe in our ER, and we're going to ship them with a potential sepsis. And so some of the things that I think a lot of small hospitals either are working on or have already implemented is just really that rapid sequence of getting the fluid started. And some of those things, even if they end up not being septic or they have a different diagnosis, being able to get some of those preemptive things in place so that when the patient is transferred to a higher level of care, we're able to have some of those things already started for them. So I won't read through all of this for you, but that's kind of something that we're seeing small hospitals take on as kind of their sepsis programming is, you know, we may not know that they're septic, but if you have a potential septic patient after screening, what items can we get done out of the evidence-based bundle that when they get transferred, they're already starting to have some of that necessary care. So those are kind of some of the things we'll work through during the cohort as we get that going is, you know, early recognition, making sure that we're screening, some, you know, standing protocols, nurse-driven protocols. You know, if we see if they have a positive screen, can we get going with the lactic acid and some of the other testing right away so that those things are kind of on a faster, you know, process-based measures so that the patient's getting the care quickly. And then if transfer is the decision, then some of those things are already in place as they go to their transferring to a higher level of care. So just in speaking to that, so this is kind of it's kind of small, I don't know if you guys can see it, but these are kind of the layout of the upcoming learning cohort. Registration has not been sent out yet, just kind of save the dates, but what we're looking at doing is just kind of, we're going to talk about creating sepsis screening process, whether it's in your ER, on your floor, how does it look to screen for sepsis, early recognition, those kinds of things. And then really moving into, you know, whether you create a sepsis alert or you have a sepsis treatment protocol that can be implemented once a positive screening comes back. So just kind of putting together that process within a hospital. And then starting to look at ways to audit those processes. Once you get something put into place, is everyone educated? Are they using the processes, and are you meeting those? Whatever process measures you put in place, are your nursing staff or your clinical staff putting those into place? So just a way to audit your processes and make sure that those things are happening for your patients. So that'll kind of be the trajectory. It won't start until November. We're kind of finishing up with our falls cohort, and then we'll give time to get everybody registered, but that'll be kind of upcoming. And we should be getting registration stuff out soon so that everybody can get stuff on their calendars. And that is kind of all I have for today. We're done a little bit early. Does anybody have questions or other stuff they want to talk about? Well, hearing none, we will give you all back 20 minutes of your day. And yeah, look for registration information probably in the next few weeks to be part of our sepsis cohort and improve the care we give across the state. And even if you already have a sepsis program in place, you would be a great person to have in there because that networking and sharing of best practices is always really where we learn the most. So would love to have any and everybody join us. If you think of questions, holler at me. You can email me or call me, and have a good rest of your Monday.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jeannie.